Hi, everybody. My name is Rodica, and my presentation tonight is like a quick script that I put together for, I guess I call it an ETL script. You could do a number of things with the script, but I wanted to show people how you would pull data from an API, how you would make some transformations, and at the end of the script, there's some processing of images, which I'm excited about. Um, I wanted to start. So when I was first envisioning how to sort of go about presenting, first urge was to apologize for how much work I put, or not necessarily enough work that I put, and just kind of be apologetic about it. And I guess I decided to take a different turn and try to raise awareness actually of people that have imposter syndrome, of which I'm a group of part of. We tend to be apologetic, profusely apologetic. We tend to always kind of put ourselves down and be harsh on ourselves. And I think the reason why we do that is actually we're trying in a very not helpful way to gain either like acceptance or approval of other folks. Is not to say that our work is bad. That's what we say, but that's not the reason why we say it, I guess. So just raising awareness that that's a thing that happens, and if you see it, just maybe praise the person and for the effort, Back to the script that I wrote. It's real estate industry, and I am interested in real estate. It's an domain that has been interesting to me for a number of years. I think it's a good domain to gain more knowledge in. Either if you might be interested in just getting data for maybe if you want to purchase a house for yourself or a rental unit, or look at market data, or even if it's just to understand like bigger picture what happens in the society with real estate, some possibly troublesome trends. When I was trying to find data to pull, I didn't really find that many APIs. I actually, the one that I'm using in the script is through Rapid API, but my understanding is that it has Zillow data. So I'm not sure how it works under the hood. But like I can see that it references some Zillow ID and things like that. But again, the endpoint is through Rapid API. The script, I'll show it in a bit. It's on the other side of the page that's hidden under the GitHub page. The script has like three parts. The part one is more about making the calls and gathering the data. The second part is putting that data in a data frame, and doing some transformations. And the third, it identifies, it like goes through collections of images and uploads them to an S3 bucket. I got that to work today. So here I have it, and I guess I also created a Jupyter notebook, and I thought perhaps because I don't really have sort of slides, I could put it in, I could run snippets of this in the notebook if that's of any interest. Basically what it would do would just show like when you actually make the code, what the data and the data frame might look like, just like a different steps in the process, what the result is. I made some notes on the side as I went on with this project, and it is available. You can pull it down from GitHub at the, I don't know, it's kind of tiny over there, but github.com/Rodica, which is my username, /quick_API. I figured, I don't know, people can actually reuse this if they want. They can reuse it in which ways? Maybe you can collect a lot of images, and you can run it through like a machine learning, I don't know, computer vision algorithm. You could pull more data. My data is kind of, I limited it so I don't have to have that baggage of working with too much data, but you could pull more data, and you can run some other kind of analysis on it, more complex analysis, perhaps than mine is more like transformation, not even analysis. You could, there's a way for this API in which you could use Polygon, so you can kind of target, you can increase your area. Right now, the script pulls for Chicago only. If you use Polygon, you can target. Polygon is like you give the points, the latitude and longitude, to specify the area that you're interested in. What else could you do with this script? or the sample of it. Oh, you can set it like a regular task, a daily, or however often you want, and you could have it set in like a email notification with perhaps new data that shows up, pops in, say like maybe there's new properties. So perhaps I'm gonna switch to, I'm not sure how to go about this. I was thinking maybe perhaps to switch to the Jupyter Notebook and try to run part 1, part 2, part 3. Or I can sort of try to explain what's going on in the code. I don't know, maybe I would take votes here or opinions as to what people prefer. Yes. Tenacity, okay. Make it a little bigger. Let's see if I do that. Yeah. So in the first part that I marked here with capital letters, I think the gist, the most important part is like making these requests request.get calls. And also like the important part is the endpoint, or I wouldn't say just the endpoint, the URL basically. How does that look? When I worked with APIs in the past, well, let me backtrack for a second. The URL as it is here is made up of the endpoint plus query parameters, a collection of query parameters. And in the past, I've actually had a challenge building that query parameters. I'm using the requests package here to make the API calls. It plays very nicely with passing these query parameters. You simply pass it as a dictionary, which happens down here. And it just suffices to pass it in as params, equal params. But I've had in the past needed to kind of actually, what this does when you pass the param, it builds a string in a specific way that the API can understand so that it actually queries the backend. It looks something like examples over here. Oop. Moved over. But when I say query string, it looks something like this. Basically, it tries to ask the server for data that's only within these params, only in Chicago or Lincolnwood locations or cities. I've given a couple more or params here. Only houses that are for sale. I believe like another sort of status could be like if it's contingent, or I'm only interested in a specific status. I'm only interested in home types, which are houses. Maybe I'm not interested in condos. So it limits, so these query params, this string specifies in my request what data I want from that endpoint. So there's two parts to the to building up this query or this URL, the endpoint and the query params. I made note that it is, if you have to do it this way, where you build the string, it gets pretty tricky. And for once, you probably want to use something like URL lib, URL encode or quote, which basically knows how to make that string likable by the server you're sending the query to, the API call to. So that's sort of, I guess, the short, I think, of what happens here. There are repeated calls to get data, which then gets loaded into a data frame. The interesting thing that I found with this particular API is that it was working with pagination. So in order to, it wasn't enough to make one call. I had to figure out how to add in the query params, add one param that said the page each time, which page I want. Give me page 1, page 2, page 3, until I reach the end of the pages. So that's what happens in this while. It's kind of a repeat of the calls. I think one other thing to note is that it's very likely that these calls to APIs might fail, and that's why the retry is it's a decorator provided by Tenacity package. I use it up here before I define sort of the method that makes the API calls. It basically, like, if a call to API fails, it can try however many times you tell it to try. And because the API endpoints do not like one call after another, within a second, within milliseconds, you can tell the retry strategy to be like, maybe you want to wait. If you use the weight exponential, it will use an exponential formula, which increases the delay in between calls in an exponential fashion. I think that's all that's relevant here. I don't know if there's any more questions. Once I gathered all the data through all these repeated calls, I put them in a data frame. I basically, every time I get a batch, I concatenate, I kind of glue together the different collections of data. And I ended up with data frame DF, which I showed just a couple of examples. I will say the endpoint that I worked with, I think the microphone died again. Hello? Oh, never mind. Yeah. This endpoint that I found, it was good because it had pictures, it had images, but it didn't have enough. It wasn't as rich in the data that it had for the properties, the houses. What ideally, so like the processing that I could do here or the transformations that I could do here in the data frame were kind of limited. And let me see if I can find the file. I wanted to show, it just felt like it wasn't enough data to have that much transformation to begin with. And there was another point, it would have taken sort of an additional step. There was another point that I could have used to enrich my my data, but at that point, I worked with what I had. Okay, this is also very small. But after repeated calls, this is basically how the data frame looks like, more or less. And I guess I was expecting to see, there's just not that many fields. I was expecting to see more information about description of the basement of the house, maybe if the materials that the house is made of, maybe like fencing or variety of fields, and it just is very scarce. I think I have maybe 25 fields. Again, they can be enriched using a different point and sort of merging the data, but I worked with what this endpoint provided. Where is it? And so once, say, you apply filters based on your needs, I just assume maybe I want like a specific price point. I only want, say, 3 bedrooms. I'm targeting specific properties. Once you've done your filtering, I iterated through the image collection, which in this particular data set, it's called carousel photos. And I was able to upload them to S3. The only issue I had here was this put object. I was trying to make them visible to the public, which they are now, but it was a bit of an issue with AWS trying to figure out the permissions to that bucket. I didn't run it all. I could run it, but I only just populated a few. And I would like to say that this should be hopefully visible by everybody. I just dropped them in S3 and made them available. I think that's just to say that, or just to show that you could have access. You can make them available so you can check them however, and make them available to whomever you want or however you want as far as like images. Perhaps it's easier for processing. Yeah, and I guess one other notable thing is I try to wrap the parts of the code that possibly likely are gonna error out with a try except, and that's why it looks a little, more complicated. But wrapping it with try excepts is just so that if it does fail, it doesn't it just doesn't stop your script. It keeps going, goes to the next step, even though that one particular step might error out. I think that's, I don't know. Script is available. You can download it. I probably need to put a license on there. Somebody earlier mentioned something about a license. I can run a couple of these steps in a Python or what do you call it? Notebook somewhere I had it. if it's interest, or if you guys are bored and tired, I can just pause right here. That can be fine too. Demo. Let's see. Well, if it works, eh? Isn't that the thing with? So the huh? What could possibly go wrong? Let's see. Can I make this big? Oh. So this is the same. Or even so, this is old code that was old. Same content from the script. I just broke it down in 3 parts. Yeah, when I run this, it pulls the data frame. I guess this is the first page, basically, the data from the first page from the API. And then in the subsequent calls, I concat. I get a new data frame, and I concat with this one that I obtain here. And actually, when I looked at the data, I didn't like looking at it in the data frame here. I like the notebook for when I make sort of transformations on certain fields. But if I want to get a bigger picture view, I downloaded it, like I showed earlier. I downloaded into a comma separated file, and I looked at it in Excel basically, or in Ubuntu's LibreOffice. It's just because I can't see enough with the Pandas data frame. But let's see, for processes like these, that's when I like to use the Jupyter Notebook. Basically, over here, I was trying to add a new field, say called special interest. And I was trying to understand if the way because I'm building this field based on some logic existing based on criteria from different fields. So in order for me to sort of monitor if the special interest field has correct values, I wanted to see the other fields that I was using to derive it. This is kind of a made up field. It's just assuming that, perhaps if I'm researching properties, perhaps I'm more interested if their price dropped significantly, or if they're really fresh on the market. That's what you could create a new column in your table to mark that. I think that's it. I don't know that I have much more than this. I guess I can try to run the script to show you that it's uploading more pictures as we go, because right now, let's see, right now I had just a handful. And so if I try to run it, and if it's not yelling at me, I'm not sure. Okay. It should populate more pictures in AWS. That is, if it doesn't fail for some reason. Yeah. So I had 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. It's got 60 pictures already. There you go. So if I let it run now, who knows? It had 113 records times roughly maybe 15 pictures. It's gonna add hundreds of images. I should have probably also, now I had lost that. I should probably add a threading when downloading the images. That would have probably made it much faster, because right now it's just doing one image at a time, like a thread execution pull to kind of have it in parallel. Maybe that's a to-do for some next time. Have questions and stuff. Why?
Yeah. Oh, well, you got to answer.
Oh, yeah, I do.
It's over here somewhere. What is your plan? What would you like to do with this data now? You've pulled a number of records. You're obviously interested in the pictures specifically.
I actually, my build more AWS services around it, just kind of develop it more AWS, or make it more of a full-fledged ETL. Right now, it's mostly run locally. It could be, I could put it in a Lambda, so all of this could be run with the Lambda. Probably shouldn't be too hard. It could be scheduled. The filtering as it is, it's more for a sort of an example, but like I would actually make the filtering more tailored to what I aim. And I would probably put that notification, either put it, I'm not sure, notification to either send to my email or like put it somewhere and just sort of where I can check. Another thing that I would have liked to do is write this data to like a database. This was like the quick and dirty way to get into a data file. The data file, I do write it locally. If I want to check it, this is a very simple line. I just save it locally. I can read from that data file later and merge with newer data. Again, this is the quicker sort of cutting corners. Probably using some sort of storage in the AWS or some other, maybe it can be local too. These are ways and avenues you could go about it. But I think the cool thing is like the collection of pictures. And I don't know if people, I was at a AWS reInvent, and I don't do a lot of things with machine learning, but they did. It was I went through a workshop with SageMaker, and it was fairly simple to run these pictures through SageMaker. And I'd be curious, I guess that would be one thing that I would like to take it further. See if I collect a bunch of data, what can I do with, or a bunch of images, what I can do with that. Yeah. Yeah. The blog? What is it called? What do they do? Yeah, no, I haven't heard of it, but be cool to check. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So you were using Tenacity for retries. I was curious if Tenacity supports like the concept of retriable versus not retriable exceptions.
I don't know that I've seen non-retriable. I don't even know that I heard non-retriable.
Well, so like you can specify not to retry certain exceptions.
Yeah, I think you can specify to retry in which cases you want to retry, which then eliminates the cases in which you won't retry. I think you can put, I want it if there's this kind of error. I've seen like 5, and that's why I note somewhere 500 kinds of errors, which are typically on the server side. I used to have it, and I might have not kept it. Trying to browse through here, but you can say, oh, here. Well, in this case, so I was giving a separate example. You can use it with the Tenacity, but there's a package in Python, which I would like to try some other time, URL lib3 util retry. And over there, you can, on this force list, you can say the kinds of errors in which you want to attempt the retries. I would say ideally, I think you probably want to do them for the server errors, which are the 500. But I guess up to you. I guess up to you and how you write your code. I will say when I ran the code with the Tenacity, it felt like when he was doing the retries, it felt like he was erroring. It was obfuscating a little bit what was actually happening with the error. It was a little harder for me to actually see what the error from the server was. So a little bit disappointed, I think, that was the case. And perhaps it doesn't happen if you use this other Python built-in.
Yeah, I guess I'd just be curious if it's actually just wrapping URL lib3, but
if it's what?
If it's wrapping URL lib3.
Oh.
That's, yeah.
Very likely, yeah. There's also like a newer version that I saw with URL lib. One of them is wrapping the other. I don't know which one it goes. Yes.
Forgive me. I know, like you can use a not retrying. You can catch, like you could do both ways. You can catch certain exceptions and only certain exceptions, or you could ignore everything except certain exceptions.
Yeah.
And I think Tenacity, the retrying in URL lib3 is great. but Tenacity would let you retry something even if it's not a URL request. It could be like a database call or something like that.
yeah.
And then I think also, what was the third thing?
So you can put the decorator around like whatever snippet of code, even if it's,
Yeah.
API request or not.
And also to get, because I know what you mean by Tenacity obfuscating the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
exception. There's a flag if you pass to it like re-raise, it will re-raise the original exception.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of handy.
Yes, it is. Because I couldn't tell, like, obviously there was something wrong with how I was making my API call, but I couldn't say the errors that come back from the API, usually they're helpful. And like you can see it, you're like, well, what's,
Okay, thank you.
thank
Rodica.
y'all.